Algae biofuel. You've probably heard about it, right? It was pitched as this perfect green energy source, a miracle fuel that could power our world without, destroying it. But its story, wow, it's been a real roller coaster of hype, disappointment, and now a pretty surprising comeback. So let's get into it. First things first, let's just talk about the money involved here. The global market for algae biofuel is expected to top $20 billion by 2033. Now, that is a massive number, and it tells you this technology is far from dead. Actually, it looks like it's quietly gearing up for something big. But that just leads to the big question, doesn't it? If this fuel is so great, if the market potential is so huge, then where is it? Why aren't we all filling up our cars and planes with pond scum right now? Well, as you're about to see, the answer is complicated. To really get what's happening now, we've got to rewind a bit. Let's go back to the beginning, to what some people called the green gold rush, when algae really seemed like it was going to solve everything. So what even is this stuff? Well, put simply, some types of algae are basically tiny microscopic oil factories. They produce these fatty acids, lipids, that we can then extract and refine into fuels that work perfectly in our existing engines. We're talking biodiesel, jet fuel, the whole shebang. And on paper, the advantages looked just incredible. Algae can produce way more fuel per acre than crops like corn or soy. It doesn't need good farmland. You can grow it in places you can't grow anything else. It grows super fast, and here's the real kicker. It literally eats CO2 from the atmosphere to grow. I mean, come on. It sounded almost too good to be true. Which, of course, brings us right back to that nagging question. With a list of pros like that, what on earth went wrong? Why did this green gold rush just kind of fizzle out? Well, the first major blow came from a place you might not expect, the very industry it was supposed to replace. This is the part of the story we call the oily retreat. This quote from The Guardian just sums it up perfectly. The biggest energy companies on the planet jumped in, made all these huge, splashy announcements, and then, just as quickly, they all quietly backed out. You can really see it happen here. The big excitement kicked off around 2008. ExxonMobil became the poster child, pledging $600 million. But then, by 2015, things had cooled way down. And by 2022, even Exxon, the last one standing, had pulled the plug. Okay, so they all left. The crucial question is, why? Was the tech just a total failure, or was there something else going on behind the scenes? Well, this gets us to the billion-dollar problem. Public skepticism started to grow, and it's captured perfectly by this Reddit user. The big accusation was greenwashing, making these big, misleading claims about how eco-friendly you are. The argument was that these companies were spending a whole lot more on advertising their green research than on the actual research itself, all just to boost their public image. And, the numbers seem to back that up. Remember that $600 million promise from Exxon? Well, over 12 years, they ended up investing just over half of that, $350 million. Now compare that to what the actual experts, the scientists doing the work, said was needed. They weren't talking about millions. They were talking about billions, with a B. The funding was just a drop in the ocean compared to what was required to actually solve the massive scientific hurdles. And those hurdles were huge. I mean, to make this stuff commercially viable, you need an algae strain that can produce about 15 grams of oil per square meter. Wild algae, they don't even come close. Scientists were trying to genetically modify it, but you have to remember, they were trying to re-engineer an organism that's been on this planet for hundreds of millions of years. It was going to take a whole lot more time and money than anybody was willing to give. But wait, because the story does not end there. Just as the dream of algae-powered cars was fading, a new, and honestly a much more practical idea started to take shape. This is the rebirth, from waste to watts. Researchers started asking a totally different question. Instead of trying to grow algae in these super expensive, sterile ponds, they thought, what if we grow it in something we have way too much of? Wastewater. It turns out algae absolutely love the nutrients, like nitrogen and phosphorus, that you find in it. And this setup creates this amazing win-win cycle. The algae cleans the wastewater by basically eating all the pollutants. So right away, you get two valuable things: clean water and a ton of algae biomass. The biofuel then becomes this awesome byproduct, not the single, super expensive goal it used to be. And the benefits here are enormous. This approach slashes the cost of two different things:
making fuel and treating water. It gives the algae a free source of food and water, and it helps prevent those nasty algal blooms that pollute our lakes and rivers. All of a sudden, wastewater isn't a problem to be solved, it's a resource to be used. This whole new way of thinking makes the economics look a whole lot better.
Okay, so where does that leave us today? Is this new approach actually panning out? Let's take a look at the road ahead. Well, for one, the government's getting back in the game. The U.S. Department of Energy recently announced over $20 million in new funding for projects that are pushing algae tech forward. That's a pretty clear signal that this story is far from over. But notice the shift in focus here. It's not just about fuel for our cars anymore. It's about turning seaweed and other wet waste into a whole range of products, including things like animal feed and fertilizer. The new strategy seems to be finding these high-value markets that make the entire process more profitable. And it's not just the government. Private money is flowing back in, but it's a different crowd this time. We're talking about big players like Bill Gates' climate fund Breakthrough Energy, along with Chevron and even United Airlines. And get this, they're all funding the exact same research company that Exxon walked away from. It really signals a smarter, more targeted approach this time around. So when you think about it, maybe the original dream of algae biofuel was never wrong, it was just incomplete. Maybe its true power isn't just as a fuel for our cars, but as a critical piece in a much bigger puzzle, a circular system that helps us solve our problems with waste, water, and energy all at the same time. The future of algae might be way more interesting than we ever imagined.